In this Baldur's Gate 3 video, we're going to go through the 13 things that you should know early on, because you're going to run into scenarios where you can utilize these tricks a lot, and the sooner you know about them, the more times you'll be able to take advantage of them. Number 1, trade and barter. Now when it comes to selling your items fast, the trade screen is better than barter because you can just click once and it will instantly sell your items. However, barter is really great for increasing the vendor's attitude towards you by giving them small amounts of gold or items, and then upon reaching 100 attitude with the vendor, you'll get a 20% discount from that vendor. This can be totally worth it when you're planning on buying something really expensive from them, and you can give them really worthless items over and over to build up that favor, and even small amounts of gold will gradually increase their positive attitude towards you. Things like forks, knives, and other junk. Also, your character's charisma affects your prices too, so make sure to initiate conversation with a vendor with your highest charisma character. Once the trade and barter menu is up, you can freely switch between characters and you'll still be getting the best price available to you as long as you started the conversation with your high charisma character. This should happen by default typically because your high charisma character should also be your dialogue character. Okay, moving on to number 2, we have pressing T. If you highlight an enemy and press T, you will examine them and see if they have any buffs or to see what they might be immune to. This can be very, very helpful to see if they are buffing minions around them, maybe they're invulnerable and wouldn't even be killable, or in some cases when attacked it will even magically disappear. You wouldn't know about any of these buffs without examining, so it can be a really great practice to start examining enemies before you engage in a fight. It can give you a heads up like, oh, I might not even win this fight because of the buffs that this monster has or this NPC. And by highlighting and then just pressing T, you can get to the examine menu really, really quickly. All right, number 3, we have cross character consumes. Now, when in combat, you might run into a situation where you need to use a potion, maybe cast a scroll or throw an item, but you realize that item is on a different character than the character whose turn it is right now. So instead of pressing tab and then sending that item over to your character to use, you can actually just right click that item and use it right away for your current turn character, even if they don't have it in their inventory. In short, consumables don't need to be in the character's inventory to use them. You can hit tab and use an item from a different character's inventory as long as it's your turn. This can be very handy if you've been evenly distributing your healing potions across your party or giving the arrow to your ranged character. You don't have to do any of that. You can actually just load up a single character to be sort of like a mule character and hold all the team's items, and they can still use them when they need to. All right, number 4, we have switch to melee. So make sure if you are using a ranged weapon at the end of your turn after you've done all of your actions, end your turn by switching back to a melee weapon. And this is important because you don't want to miss any opportunity attacks, which ranged weapons don't offer. Also, you don't apply the threatened condition to an enemy if you're using a ranged weapon, which will give disadvantage on ranged attacks, which also includes ranged spell attacks. So it's a good practice to switch to a melee weapon when you're done using a ranged weapon. This is something that could happen if there just is a huge distance between you and the enemies. Even your melee characters, maybe you're going to switch them to a ranged weapon temporarily. It could be definitely a really good practice to switch them back to a melee weapon, especially if you've got something like Sentinel or something like that where you want like to use an opportunity attack. You got to have your melee weapon out. So make sure to switch over when you can at the end of your turn, and there are hotkeys for both of those. All right, number 5, we have prepare an ambush during dialogue. Now this is a really cool one. You can actually switch to other characters while in a dialogue with an NPC. Just hit F1 through F4 to quickly change to a different character. This can be really useful to reposition yourself before a fight. Hitting G ungroups your party, so you can individually move your party to different spots without them all following the one character you're controlling. Some good things to do before a fight, for example, would be to pull out your crates, like we talked about in the last video, stack them up so you've got your high ground advantage ready to go. You could throw down a candle, like we talked in the last video, and light up so that you got your weapon dipped in fire. You could get your melee into melee range, get your ranged out of melee, and so on. So once everyone's in position, you can choose the dialogue option to begin the fight. And basically, whether you're talking, it's like keeping the bad guy busy while your team gets in position. So it's kind of a cool way to prepare an ambush while you're talking. All right, number 6, we have karma is real. Karmic dice is a game setting that by default is enabled and keeps you from getting too lucky or too unlucky. If you roll high a lot, your chances of rolling lower go up and vice versa. This can cause you to sometimes succeed at things your character would normally fail at, and actually fail sometimes when you're really proficient malfunction at something. Many players swear that turning off karmic dice actually makes their gameplay better because dice rolls are truly random with it off, and your bonuses and deficiencies are much more pronounced. For example, if you have an AC of 24, you should rarely get hit, but with karmic dice, it'll still happen. With karmic dice off, you should really rarely get hit. However, Michael Dowse, Larian Director of Publishing, addressed this debate and said to consider karmic dice as a friendly DM. If you're failing too many rolls, it'll balance it out like a friendly DM. In short, he said karmic dice is for you if you want the RNG gods to be slightly weighted in your favor. So it sounds like it's an advantage to actually keep that on, but for those looking for an even more challenging experience, turning it off can be another way to crank up the difficulty ever so slightly. All right, number 7, we have wares. When picking up items, you can choose to add them to your wares. And when you add items to wares, this can be very helpful for when you get to a vendor. You can just click the button that says sell wares and it will sell everything you marked as wares. This is a quick and easy tip and a great way to just get rid of all your junk at once. This is something I wish I knew sooner personally, as I love picking up every single item that I run across to sell at the vendor later. All right, number 8, we have dig. If you failed a survival check while exploring, there's probably a pile of dirt nearby with a treasure chest buried under it. However, since you failed the check, it's not going to glow and have something that you're going to be able to interact with, but you can actually still dig up the chest using your shovel by manually digging. So don't worry too much if you failed the survival check. Basically, even having that appear lets you know that there's buried treasure nearby, and you can still use dig to go get that. All right, number 8, we have inventory. Well, very obvious if you've ever moved files around on your computer or played around with desktop icons like I like to do in my free time, then you should know that Control-click can be used to individually add items to a selection, and Shift-click adds everything between the first click and the second click to select multiple items at once. This can be very helpful for moving around items in bulk. For example, you can sort by the most heavy, then Shift-click the top item and then scroll down like a couple rows and send that all over to Karlak because she's a strength-based character and is going to have a really huge carrying capacity. So this can be very helpful to, if you become encumbered, very quickly unencumber your character and send a bunch of items to a different character to share the load, as Sam would say. All right, number 10, we have Flourish and Pommel Strike. Now these are bonus actions that are unlocked by the weapon you're using. Flourish and Pommel Strike are examples of moves you should use before your primary attack. Most often, this bonus action is something you might end up using after you've attacked, and you see that you still have a bonus action because you didn't realize this new weapon you equipped gave you this ability, but it's actually something you should use before you attack. Pommel Strike can apply Dazed, which gives your enemy disadvantage on wisdom saving throws, disables them from taking reactions, and they lose their dexterity bonus to their armor class. So your attack can do more damage against them when their armor class is lowered if you Pommel Strike first. Flourish is very similar. It has a chance to give the status effect of off balance, which causes the affected entity to have disadvantage on strength and dexterity checks, and attack rolls against it have advantage. There's also Brace, ranged, which uses your movement at the cost of rolling ranged damage twice and using the higher result, and Prepare, which similarly uses your movement to deal additional damage. So there are plenty of abilities that actually you'd probably want to use first before your actual attack that you gain from weapons. So my recommendation to you, try to pay attention to what new actions you get from a new weapon you pick up to make sure you're using them in the right order. All right, tip number 11, we have configure your toolbar. Admittedly, I did not know that you could fully customize your toolbar. Sure, I saw you could increase the number of rows, but did you know you can even move your spells and abilities around to have it make sense for you, so you know where your heals are, your control spells, your attacks, and even items. You can also go into the options and change what types of items are automatically added to the toolbar when you pick them up, which gives you a really great amount of control over what that toolbar looks like. Having a fully customizable toolbar, in my opinion, is incredibly helpful for knowing where your spells, actions, and items are located and putting them into places that are comfortable for you. All right, tip number 12, we have smashing chests and doors instead of lockpicking. So this is going to happen probably a little later, but once you deal enough damage in a single hit, you can actually cause damage to sturdy things and eventually break them entirely, letting you destroy chests and doors to get at the loot inside or to just avoid lockpicking. You can use this to save on lockpicking supplies, and actually it can save you time since you don't have to go into that menu, use a bonus, click the roll. You can just hold down control and then click, which will cause your character to attack, which is actually faster than right clicking and then selecting attack and then doing that over and over. So it's kind of a 2-in-1 tip there. You can destroy stuff and just hit control click to make that happen. And then finally we have at number 13, carry extra for camp supplies. Now, honestly, chances are high that you're going to have camp supplies on your character. They're kind of everywhere. But if you're OCD and send all of your camp supplies to camp, then you might actually find that you don't have any on your character. Then you might run into an NPC that's going to ask you for food, and having some on your character will help you be prepared for when that happens. So my advice to you, don't send all your food back to camp. Always have some on hand for the off chance that you run into someone looking for food. And those are my 13 tips that I think are pretty important to know early on in Baldur's Gate 3. Let me know if there's something I missed and there's something you think is really important for knowing in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.